district counselor representing Alston Brighton for the next 3 weeks. We are here to discuss docket 1624, order that pursuant to Chapter 40, Section 56, the residential factor in the City of Boston for fiscal year 20 shall be the minimum residential factor as determined by the Commissioner of Revenue pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 58, Section 1A, and be it further that pursuant to Chapter 59, Section 5C, as amended, a residential exemption in the amount of value equal to 35% of the average assessed value of all Class 1 residential parcels in the City of Boston be and hereby is approved for fiscal year 2020. We are joined today by my good friend and colleague from Jamaica Plain, Matt O'Malley, as well as our Commissioner of Assessing, Nick Arenello. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Nick for his presentation.
Good morning, councilors.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Nick Arenello. I'm the Commissioner of Assessing for the City of Boston. We're here today, as you so eloquently mentioned, to discuss two matters. One is to adopt the minimum residential factor related to classification, and the other is to hopefully adopt a residential exemption for the maximum percentage currently allowed by state law. So briefly, the minimum residential factor is related to classification. So one of the things that the assessing department is obligated to do every year is classify property according to its use. So residential, commercial, industrial, personal property is another category. And what since 1983, the City Council and the city have adopted the minimum residential factor for the residential property, and what that essentially does is it shifts the burden of collecting the levy from residential property over to commercial property. Without adopting the minimum residential factor, we would essentially have one rate for all properties. So this creates a significant savings for the residents of our city. The other matter that we're here today, the administration seeking approval for, is adopting the residential exemption percentage. The residential exemption is a program for owner occupants, and it allows them to also get a significant discount off of their property tax bills. In fiscal year 2017, the state amended that statute to allow the exemption to be up to 35% of the average assessed value of a property. And last year, that was approximately $2,700 in savings for tax bills for our residential homeowners. And so this year, the administration would also request that we approve a residential exemption of 35%.
Great. We are joined by my other good friend from Hyde Park, Tim McCarthy. Thanks, Nick. So the 35% was adopted, and that's the highest that the state allows any municipality. And we're one of, I believe, only a handful right now that take the 35%.
Yes, no, that's accurate. And in general, I believe there are 14 communities that have a residential exemption at all as a program. And very, very few have 35% as the amount that they are currently allowing their owner occupants.
And after I present this for a vote on Wednesday, and assuming it passes, can you describe the process? It goes to DOR, I think, for certification, or?
Right, so right now, where we are in the process for finalizing values is we currently have our values submitted to the state for certification of our values, and the minimum residential factor allowing for the tax rate shift, as well as the residential exemption percentage, are two factors that go into the state's final approval of our tax rates.
Gotcha. And assuming that sales have been robust still in the city of Boston and development is still robust, do you assume that property values will indeed appreciate again this next fiscal year, I guess 2021 now.
Yes, the way it currently looks is that property values, so we're valuing property based off of January 1st of 2019 for fiscal year 2020. And so that is based on calendar year 2018 sales. And during calendar year 2018, the residential market and the commercial market were both doing reasonably well. And so values are appreciating.
Right. But it doesn't necessarily mean people's taxes will go up dramatically based on that. It will all be the formula based on Prop 2.5 as well, right?
Yes, no, that is very true. It's the overall levy as well as the assessed value both kind of go into what people's final tax bills are.
Right.
But with the benefits of adopting minimum residential factor and the residential exemption, that can allow for significant savings.
Right.
So
To offset any potential increase that an appreciation in value would probably result in. Right. And
Yes, sir.
just for the listening audience, I believe we're still the second lowest average tax rate in the greater Boston area. I think we had that hearing maybe 6 months ago. Actually, it was probably during the budget hearings, and I believe Chelsea is a little below us, and we're second to Chelsea in I believe the greater Boston area. I think that deserves attention, as well as the fact that our friends in the business community pay probably 60% of our total tax revenue. Is that accurate? 60% versus 40%, mostly residential?
Yes, sir. So for last year, or the current, the last approved year, fiscal year 19, the residential property was approximately 65% of the overall value in the city, and they paid just under 40% of the overall levy, and that is due to classification and minimal residential factor and our split rate. And so commercial property, not including industrial and personal property, was just under 30% of the overall value for the city, and they were paying 52.2% of the overall levy.
Right. Gotcha.
And to go back to the point that you made a little earlier, Boston's single-family tax home bill, the average bill, because of classification and the residential exemption, last year was about $3,500. Chelsea and Everett were just under us at $2,800 and $3,300 for their average single-family home values. But when you look at some of our even closer surrounding areas, where you have Cambridge's bill was around $7,300 a year.
Wow.
Brookline's was just over $15,000. Somerville's $5,300, and so we're
That's why a
very
lot of
competitive.
Right, and that's why a lot of people are moving back to the city, quite honestly. In my building, just recently moved into, most of them are from Newton, Wellesley, Andover, and, empty nesters coming back, taking advantage of the low tax rate that the city of Boston offers residents, not necessarily everyone, but residents. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your great stewardship of this. Nick, welcome. Happy holidays. So just, obviously this is a no-brainer, but just so I understand this right, every year the council has to vote to adopt the minimum residential factor.
Yes, sir.
Every calendar year.
Yes, sir. Every calendar year. And happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you. And if we were to not vote on this, there would be no residential exemption opportunity for property taxes?
So two things would happen if we did not vote to approve the split rate through classification and the residential exemption. One, we would have a single rate for residential and commercial property. And then that would also cause taxpayers' bills to increase significantly.
Interesting, okay. And so we're setting it, once again, we're setting it at the highest allowed by Mass General laws, which is 35%.
For the residential exemption, yes.
For the residential exemption. And have we ever, and we've been doing this since 1983?
So the residential exemption in fiscal year 2017, it was just increased to 35%.
Oh, okay.
Prior to that, we were at
30.
the highest allowed, which was 30%.
Okay.
The minimum residential factor, which varies because there are a number of components that go into that calculus, which is why we go with adopting the minimum, the lowest possibly allowed by state. We've been pushing for the lowest possibly allowed by state since 1983.
Great. And do we know when my wife and I purchased our house, the prior owners did not take advantage of the residential exemption, even though it was their primary residence, so it took us a longer time before we could obviously qualify. Do we know, even anecdotally, the percentage of Bostonians who, for whatever reason, don't take advantage of this incredibly lucrative money-saving opportunity?
To be honest, I do not know that. I know that we do spend a considerable amount of effort doing outreach to homeowners for all of our exemption programs, because we also have a number of personal exemptions.
Yeah, sure.
For the elderly.
And for
and
military, of
veterans.
course, great opportunities. But I guess my question is this: that's great to hear. Do we include it in the property tax bill, some sort of a flyer, maybe even once a year, saying you may qualify for the residential exemption?
We do an insert in the third quarter bill every year.
Great.
Identifying some programs that we have that people might be interested in taking advantage of. We also, when we pick up new sales, the first year that people are eligible, we proactively mail out exemption applications to them. So as in your instance, there might be a little delay, so maybe you're not eligible the very first moment that you move into your home, but if you're eligible the next year, we will mail you an application.
Great.
To try and get that information to you so that you can take advantage of this great benefit.
That's great. Terrific. Well, thank you for your great work, Commissioner. Thank you. Laura Isberg has been a great resource to me and my team because we get a lot of these nuanced, difficult questions. So keep up the good work, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That concludes today's hearing on docket 1624. I'll be reporting out favorably on Wednesday, and wish you a happy holiday season, Nick. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
This hearing's adjourned.